Welcome to the Sargassum Champions course. You are currently tuning into one of the videos produced for this course. Funding for the course comes from the Resilience, Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESEMBID, financed under the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESEMBID is being implemented by Expertise France, with the primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean overseas countries and territories. Let's get ready to learn together.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sargassum Champions course. In today's video we're going to talk about hurdles to production, or what keeps people from being successful making sargassum companies or sargassum based products. As you know, there's a lot of companies out there who are being successful, who are growing, who are making great products, but it's also not as easy as it looks. And like any new enterprise or new business, there's a lot of challenges. And we wanted to make a video that kind of summarizes these challenges. So if you are thinking of starting a business, you know what you're up to, and you can get prepared for a long ride of lots of problems, but hopefully a lot of successful problem solving. We got in touch with the authors from the Sargassum Uses guide, but unfortunately they were just off to go into the field. So instead of them being here and telling you about their study from 2019, I'm going to summarize one of their chapters on the challenges for you. And then we're also hearing from two people who gave us some feedback from in the field on the challenges they were facing. So first of all, I'm going to share my screen now. The study I am summarizing a chapter from is called Sargassum Uses Guide. It's from the FAO and CERMES, and it was written by Anne Desrochers, Shelley Cox, Hazel Oxenford, and Brigitte van Tussenbroek. So the first set of challenges they summarize is the unpredictability of the supply. So there's the key challenges that there's a major uncertainty regarding sargassum influx, both in timing, quantity, and location. So it's very difficult to know how much resource you actually have that year to make products. And there's also not much monitoring yet going on of the volume and the location of the sargassum strandings. I personally just found out about this again last week. The company I'm working for asked us if we could look into how much sargassum arrives in different Caribbean islands. And for most of them, there's literally no data out there that you can mine. So unless you are monitoring your own beach, it will be very difficult to find this data. And even if you're monitoring your own beach, next year could be completely different. As currently in Mexico, we're having a very light July sargassum influx, while normally this is the heaviest month of the year. There's also variability in the relative abundance of the different sargassum species and morphotypes. And it has been found that these can have different chemical properties, which means they are more suited or less suited for certain products. And having a different mix, of course, will make the yield of your product potentially vary as well. So even that is something that could affect your business. Then the chemical composition is a very big part, and there's a lot of key challenges here. First of all, there's a high salt and ash content. So salt content is not just on the outside from the salt water, which you can wash off, but of course that's costly and uses a lot of fresh water that maybe is in short supply on your island. but there's also salt inside the algae that will not be that easily washed off. And then the salt content can be problematic in anything that has to do with agriculture or feed. It is also problematic in biomethane and ethanol production and bioremediation of metals. Then the ash content, like the high ash content, is actually really good for the agricultural, so for fertilizers, etc. However, if you want to make bioenergy, so through direct combustion, so gasification, the ash content is really a problem. Next to those two specific chemical compositions being a problem, the large variation and uncertainty in how the reported concentrations and relative proportions of most chemical components of the sargassum is also a problem. So there's a lot of variation, which means you need to do a lot of testing to know what you got right now, especially if this variation is in toxic chemical components, which we have a whole video about heavy metal and arsenic that you can listen to. But also for other components, for example, sulfur or insoluble fibers, the salt, or if you have low C to N ratios, these can all affect, for example, anaerobic digestion and make that less favorable. So depending on how the sargassum is composed, your anaerobic digester may work better some days than others. The other challenge is the heavy metals and other pollutants. As said, we do have a specific video just about that, so tune in to our video about arsenic. And yes, because the chemical composition is variable, it is really hard to know what's already out there because the research has been limited so far. And even the research that is there is difficult to access. Next difficulty is the harvesting, transport, and storage. So you would think because sargassum is free, everybody can pick it up from the beach or close to the beach in the water, it would be a very cheap resource to use. However, the harvesting and the transport is generally very costly, so it makes it a kind of still a costly research to use, especially if you have to buy highly specialized equipment, which means there is an upfront cost to starting your business. There is insufficient knowledge shared with regards of suitable harvesting methods and equipment. Since this report came out, there has been a specific report on how to manage sargassum and what kind of equipment to use. So this challenge has actually been addressed by CERMES, which is really cool. There is still the large seasonal and interannual variation in sargassum influx and strandings, so that makes it difficult to prepare your harvesting and transport and storage because you don't know how much biomass you need to harvest, transport, and store, and you may get too big of machines or too little, and that can be a problem. Also, depending on what kind of equipment you use, you may cause environmental damage. You may also take a lot of sand from the beach, which not only makes environmental damage, but also the sand is very valuable on the beach for tourism, for local use, and the beach decreases in value if you're taking sand from it. And very important, there's a lack of policy and mechanisms for issuing harvesting permits. So it could be that you have this great idea for a sargassum product, but you're spending a lot of time even just getting the permit to take the sargassum from the beach. And talking about management and regulations, so because this is a relatively new phenomenon, collection and potential use are characterized by high levels of uncertainty. And due to that, there's still a lack of guiding policies and government frameworks regarding collection of sargassum, use of sargassum, and it's mostly limited on sargassum as a hazard or a waste product and less as an opportunity and a resource. So there's very little policy that actually goes about sargassum for products, and mostly just, if anything is in place, it's about the harvesting and the collection. But even there's a lot of places where you cannot even get harvesting permits, as already said just before. There's also not many or no regional policy. So each island has its, or jurisdiction has its own policies, and it becomes a bit of a puzzle pieces and makes it difficult if you have a good business to maybe move it to a different jurisdiction and help the community there deal with sargassum while also expanding your business. There are lacks of protocols and standards to support safe harvesting, transport, storage, and production. And all of these things are still being put in place. And of course, always a challenge is funding and support. So there's not that much funding available for valorization of sargassum. It's difficult to access funding. In general, in the region, there's low level of support for new ventures. So even if it's not a sargassum specific new business, you would have not that much support to do new businesses. And then, of course, for sargassum businesses, there may be even less. And some places also lack industrial infrastructure, so you would actually have to first build that up. Maybe you would need to build a warehouse to actually operate in, rather than being able to hire one that is already built. And very important on the funding side, it has been found that mixed funding, so government and private, or institution and private, likely is the best way to go in the future. And there's more and more opportunities out there that combine those and that do want to fund not just research and educational projects, but also private projects and companies working with sargassum. So this is improving for sure. So now that we have talked about those 5 challenges, we also put a call out for anybody who's working in businesses or has looked into this to tell us what they found challenging. And it seems like most of them are so busy working through these challenges that they didn't have the time to reply to us. But we got 2 replies. We got a video from Felix, who works for Carbonwave, and we got an email reply as well. And we now first gonna start with Felix's video, and then afterwards I'm gonna read to you the email we got.
Okay, my name is Felix Navarrete. I work for Carbonwave. My position is to be Director of Logistics and Transportation. Well, the reason that Carbonwave hasn't been able to process more sargassum than what we have already, I mean, we are processing about 10 to 15% of the total amount of sargassum that we collect, during the season. I will say the reasons are, one of them, we work with fresh sargassum, right? It is tough to collect only fresh and to be fast enough to bring all that sargassum to the facility to be processed. The rest of sargassum also, well, of course, goes bad, and that has to be disposed. We are developing now different technologies in order to use that rotten sargassum, but that's not the case right now. That's one of the challenges. The other challenge will be probably that the collection right now happens most of it on the beach. And also we are, well, not only us, but the collection is being taking a lot of the sand from the beaches. And that is also another blocker, probably. And I will say that the third reason, and probably one of the biggest, is for you to process the sargassum and turning into a product, you also have to develop a market for this product. And if you don't have a market for this product, you can be collecting, processing, storaging. But if you don't have a market, you're going to generate a cost that is going to be insane, insane. Totally, it's not making any sense. So one of the big blockers for sargassum to be utilized, it's to develop these markets, to find the actual application, to prove these hypotheses, all these concepts, and to put it on the market. That I will say is one of the biggest challenges. And of course, until this point, it was the legal certainty, because the lack of permits, the lack of legal paths or the legal support from the authorities was one of the big challenges for all of us. That is changing, but those can be the reasons that I have in my head.
Wow, so Felix really knows his stuff and he's been in the business for a few years. So his input is really, really valuable to us. The other person who gave us input, they sent us an email. So I'm going to read you what they sent. Salieu Kabba Sankoh, a research fellow lecturer at the Institute of Marine Biology and Oceanography and Department of Biological Science at Foray Bay College at the University of Sierra Leone, wrote to us that he had worked very closely with the Environmental Protection Agency in Sierra Leone and the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources to explore options of managing the annual problem of the Sargassum seaweed washing ashore in the Sierra Leone coastlines. Their challenges have been that the seaweed comes ashore between June and October every year, and it started in 2011. Sometimes they have massive quantities, and at other times, not so much. So, investing in technology that will process these weeds into useful products is not too attractive, as the investment will remain dormant from November till May. Similarly, when they assess the chemical composition of the seaweed, it has revealed significant levels of arsenic, and this disqualifies the weed as a fish or animal food for now. They're still trying to see if there are variations in the arsenic levels that can allow harvest and processing of the weed into animal feed. And they, of course, would be very much interested in collaborating in further exploring potential uses of the seaweed to transform the current menace into some blessing for the African coastal communities. Thank you so much, Salieu, for taking the time to respond to us. And I hope this little video has not discouraged anybody of trying to make products out of sargassum, because in my opinion, finding a way for us to make products is the only way to deal with sargassum, because putting it into landfills is not an option or is also causing problems. So we need to figure out how to make products or how to use it in a positive way. And hopefully, once we overcome all these hurdles, problems are here to be solved, right? Sargassum can actually become a pillar of the blue economy for the Caribbean and help diversify the income and the industries in the Caribbean and lead to more prosperity and more jobs. Thanks, as always, thanks for tuning in to this video. I hope you're listening to more of our Sargassum Champions course videos and also to our podcast and learn with us more about sargassum. Thank you for tuning in today and learning with us from experts in the sargassum field. This course is made possible through funding by the Resilience, Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESEMBID, financed under the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESEMBID is being implemented by Expertise France, with the primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories. The course was designed by Franziska Elmer and Evelyn Salas, and the videos were produced by Marcel van der Kamp.